So the account tab is where you're going to go in as a yearbook advisor and be able to set up different access for different users on your yearbook team. So for example, you may have a student editor, or you may have a photographer, you may have the school's business manager or the principal that wants access. And each person is probably going to need a little bit of a different access if they are on a different functionality or a different member of a different part of the team. So in this case, for example, I've gone in and I've created Catherine as my business manager. So here I look in, and really Catherine's access, the stuff that she wants to be able to go through and review, is going to have more to do with the school store, and then also for approvals. When I look at Vince, for example, Vince here is set up as my principal. So the principal might have different access functionalities, things that he'll want to look at or she'll want to look at, that are going to provide the principal more of what they're looking for. So perhaps a quick report on user activity, or the ability to jump in and have a look at some of the pages and also approve pages. Typically not something that the business manager would do. When I look at the yearbook advisor has access to almost all of the functionality. If I wanted to create somebody in here, it's really quite simple. I'm going in to add user, type in the first name, type in the last name, and their email address. And you want to be sure that the email address that you're using is the email address that they often check and they have easy access to from their school or from wherever they are at home, or where they would use the access to the internet to go on to the ConnectMe program to build yearbook pages in general anyway. So again, first name, last name, and email address. You don't actually have to worry about phone number. What you would want to do though after that is, they are one of the typical settings or user permission settings of either an advisor or co-advisor, the business manager, the editor, the photographer, the principal, or the yearbook team members. You're going to find that there's different access for each of those. So if I look at a yearbook team member, for example, their access is quite a bit more limited than, for example, the yearbook editor. The yearbook editor has more functionality and more access to the program. When I look at, for example, the school's business manager or office administrator, the access that they would want is typically a little bit different. So they would want access to the school store, and they would want access typically to the approval program, or the approval bit of looking at quotes, looking at agreements, and wanting to say, hey, this looks good, signing off on that, and being able to either print it or do so electronically. When I look at principal functionality, now with the principal, we're going to find, again, a little bit of different access there. The principal may want to look at things like user activity, and might also want the ability to look at pages, to be able to view pages and change status of pages and approve them. The yearbook advisor is going to have, again, much more access, and the yearbook editor would have a little bit more access than the yearbook team member. If I wanted to go in and I wanted to simply adjust this a little bit, and let's say I want this user who's a principal, but I want to add in the ability to edit the page ladder. As soon as I change anything on here and I had a permission preset, it now goes to other, which is fine. You just want to make sure that you have a good starting base, and then you can add or subtract from there. Absolutely fine. So I can add a user, but if I don't want to duplicate that, and let's say I have a large team, maybe I have 13 members of students that are helping me with the program, rather than duplicate that over and over and over again and have to remember all your settings, gets a little tired and tiresome on your hand to be able to write all those down. What I generally want to work with is by creating myself a sample student or a sample user. In this case, it's going to be a team member for the yearbook. I would come in and I would create a sample student. When I create that sample student, I provide a first name, a last name, and then just an unusable email address. I go in and I want to set the permissions for them depending on what access I want to give to my students. And that might vary a little bit from school to school. In some cases, it might even vary a little bit within your same team. When I have that sample student now, rather than wanting to go in and make notes of all those and say, okay, this student needs this functionality and this student needs this functionality, instead, I jump in and I hit copy user. Now they have the same access, and all I need to do is type in their first name, their last name, their email address, and click save. Now again, just as I had mentioned before, if you want to do this and copy the user, type in their first name, their last name, their email address, but you still want to make a slight change. Maybe you want to give them access to delete pages, and perhaps you want to give them access to edit the page ladder. Absolutely feel free to do so. It's just changed a little bit from the access that you had initially set up for the sample student. Just click save. One thing that I would advise you to seriously consider is to not provide the ability to approve pages to students. That should be something that as advisors you're looking at yourself, and that is a functionality that only somebody responsible at the school is able to do. The other functionality that I would certainly suggest limiting would be the ability to view and organize public uploads. Now, those are the photos that are provided to the school that come externally, perhaps from a member of the community of the school, so a student that's not on the yearbook team, or a staff member that's not on the yearbook team, or perhaps a parent that was at an event and they want to submit photos. As a yearbook advisor, typically you would want to be able to proof these photos first and approve them to make sure that you vetted them and you're able to look at it and say, this is usable, this is permissible in my yearbook, this cannot be. Just a little tip. Now again, that is the Accounts tab in ConnectMe.